I Wonder, and in this episode I am going to talk about the difference between SSD and HDD, that is solid state drive and hard disk drive. So without wasting any more time, let's start. So what is an SSD? Now SSD, as you know, stands for solid state drive. Now you all are familiar with USB memory sticks. Now you can consider SSD as a huge sized memory stick. A typical SSD works on the NAND based flash memory and it is non-volatile. Now you may ask how it is non-volatile. It is non-volatile in the sense that when the disk is turned off, then the disk does not forget what you were working on and it remembers your recent session. So it marks the most important characteristic of a permanent memory. Now an SSD does not have a mechanical arm to read or write data. Rather it relies on an embedded chip, or you can say virtual brain, to do the same. Now that chip or the processor of the SSD is known as controller, which performs certain operations based on reading and writing data. Also the controller determines the speed of the operations that the SSD performs. The controller determines the operations related to reading, writing, caching, and the speed according to which the SSD works. Now, this video is about the difference between SSD and HDD. Also, there is difference between different SSDs. Okay, and that difference is determined by the controller. Better the controller, better is the quality of the SSD. For example, SandForce SATA SSD 3.0 has a burst speed of 550 megabytes per second. So now let's talk about HDD, that is hard disk drive. So HDDs were first introduced by IBM in the 1950s. Okay, so that's around 50 years ago. Now an HDD uses magnetic power to store data on a rotating platter. Now a reading or writing head floats over that platter in order to read or write data. The performance of the hard disk drives depend on the rotation of this platter. The faster the platter rotates, the faster is the speed of reading and writing by these hard disk drives. Now the typical rotation of platter, reading writing platter, is around 5400 rpm to 7200 rpm. The advantage, or rather the perk, that HDD serves over SSD is that HDD can store a lot of data but in a cheaper price. Okay, that is, HDD is less cost effective than that of SSD. SSD is very much expensive. Okay, now the price range at which we can buy an HDD of capacity 1.5 TB, in that price range we even can't afford to buy an SSD of around 150 to 200 GB also. So that's the difference in pricing between SSD and HDD. Now, in case of appearance, both SSDs and HDDs look just the same, but the difference is in their performance. Now, HDDs, they predominantly use SATA interface, but SSDs, they use both SATA and mini SATA interface depending on the sizes of SSDs that we use. For example, the 1.8 inch, 3.5 inch and the other standard sizes of SSDs that we use, they predominantly use the SATA interface, but there are also smaller sizes of SSDs that our laptops use, and for those smaller sizes we use the mini SATA interface. Now let's quickly look at the comparison between SSDs and HDDs. The first one being power draw. HDDs, they use more power of about 6 to 7 watts, but SSDs, they use less power of about 2 to 3 watts. So the SSDs, they are more power efficient than that of the HDDs. Now about cost. HDDs, they are less cost effective than that of the SSDs. As I said that the price range at which we can buy 1.5 TB of HDD, in that price range even we can't afford to buy 150 to 200 GB of SSD. So that clearly explains the price difference between HDDs and SSDs. Now capacity. According to the latest news, the maximum capacity that a laptop SSD can store is only 1 TB. Okay, and for desktop it is up to 4 TB. But in case of HDDs, maximum capacity of a laptop HDD is 2 TB and maximum capacity of a desktop HDD is around 10 TB. So that's a huge difference, and that is basically because of the price. Okay, due to the difference in the price range, the capacity is also so much different in both the HDDs and SSDs. Now the booting time. In case of HDDs, the average booting time of an operating system is around 30 to 40 seconds, but in case of SSDs it is around 10 to 12 seconds. So there is a huge gap. Now noise. In case of HDDs, we can hear the spinning sounds of the platter. Okay, but in case of SSDs there is no such sound. Also the spinning can cause vibrations, which is absent in case of SSDs. Read and write speed. Now the average read and write speed of an hard disk drive ranges between 50 to 120 megabytes per second, but in case of SSD it ranges between 200 to 550 megabytes per second. So that is huge. Now in case of file encryption, both HDDs and SSDs support file encryption. Okay, now let's talk about file opening speed. Now file opening speed is clearly more in case of SSDs than in the HDDs. Okay, that is because of the processing speed in SSDs is more than the HDDs. So this was all for this video. I hope you got to know about the difference between SSDs and HDDs. So hit the like if you like my video, share it among your friends, and please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't yet, and also don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified about any future content. Thank you.